Funny business running a service station. It's the only business I know of that gets a profit out of giving things away for free. But it wasn't always like that. When I first started in business, we used to charge a dime to put water in the batteries and a nickel for putting air in the tires. But we found out. The first door to your right around the corner, ma'am. Yep, we do about everything. And it all makes sense, too. The more free service we give, the more chances we get to find out what a customer needs. And the more he needs, the more chances we have for those extra sales. You know, it's amazing sometimes how you can go along thinking you've got all your bases covered, and then, whammo, something happens to make you realize how badly you can miss. I know, because it happened to me right here. It took a dizzy dame to make me see it. I've got a lot to thank Molly for. Yeah, that's her name. I wish I could give her a gold medal. But that wouldn't be much good, so I finally picked out a little gadget. It's a clock with a calendar on it, so she'll always know what day it is. I'll give it to her the next time she comes in. Boy, I'll never forget the day she drove in here for the first time. It was the day I hired Jerry.
Thank you very much.
You're catching on, Jerry. But when the next customer drives in, don't just stand and wait for him to tell you what he wants. Hit the windshield, get under the hood and start checking. That's what you got a checklist for.
Even if they only want water and air?
Sure, or the restroom. We call those WPAs. It's all part of the service.
I stepped on the gas instead of the brake, but you know how it is.
That's all right, ma'am.
I always do that before I think of it. Well, I mean, 5 gallons of gas, please.
Yes, ma'am. 5 gallons, Jerry, when you finish with the windshield.
Yes, sir.
Looks like you might have a little trouble here, miss.
Mrs.
Alky, huh? Probably all boiled out by now. It shouldn't do that.
But it does it all the time. Like my husband Bill when he gets a little too much alcohol in him.
There's part of your trouble, Mrs.
Borden. Molly Borden. Oh, but my husband calls me Hank. It's silly, isn't it?
Your cooling system's probably clogged with this sludge. And with your alky boiled out, you haven't got enough winter protection. This radiator ought to be cleaned out and refilled with our glycol antifreeze. Then you won't have to bother about it again.
All right. I certainly wouldn't want my motor to freeze to death all winter the way I do.
Jerry, put this car on the wash rack and drain the radiator.
Yes, sir.
Clean and flush and check for leaks before you put in antifreeze.
Yes, sir.
Say, this radiator cap's about shot, too. The spring valve is sticking, see? You need a new cap.
Oh, that reminds me, I need a new hat, too.
A cap, a radiator cap. The water pump looks all right, but this connecting hose is in pretty bad shape. Probably rotted and sending rubber crumbs all through the system. Wouldn't be surprised if the thermostat's corroded.
Who's corroded?
Your thermostat, probably. It could be stuck, too. I'll get a wrench and have a look. Just as I thought, all gummed up, sticking at the wrong temperature. It ought to be replaced. It stops the flow between the engine and the radiator. It could be the cause of your boiling.
You sound just like my doctor when he told me about my appendix. All right, let's have a new appendix.
Thermostat.
Oh, of course. Oh, now I remember. We've got one in the front room. It's what we heat the house with, sure.
That's right. Fan belt's frayed, too, and it's getting a little loose.
Like a girdle?
Well, could be. Anyway, you need a new one.
Girdle?
Fan belt. A lot cheaper, too.
Oh, that'll be all right. I'd buy one myself if you had my size.
Jerry, get a fan belt for this model, will you? Look on the chart.
Sure thing.
You don't have to wait here while we do all this, Mrs. Borden. If you'll come back in about an hour, we'll have it all done, and I'll replace any part that you need. That's what people usually do, just leave the cars here.
Oh, no, thanks. I'm in a hurry today, so I'll wait and take it with me.
The oil's a little low, a couple of quarts.
That's what a man said yesterday. But it runs all right.
Bearings cost money. It's cheaper to buy oil. How long since this oil's been changed?
Well, I don't know. It's such a nuisance to have to put in all that oil when you're in a hurry, so I do it as seldom as possible. Don't you think so? Oh, all right. You know, I went to a fortune teller the other day, and she told me I needed a complete change. So I'm glad I got one, even if it was only oil.
Did she mention the lube job, too?
Tires are okay.
Thank you. Oh, coupon.
No, that's the guarantee on your new battery.
I feel like I was having a new car. I never can figure out which one's the heater. Now I've got it.
Wait a minute. You'd better let me put a new blade in there. That one's getting pretty worn.
Oh, no, don't touch that. It's my friend.
A friend?
Yes, when I'm driving alone, it keeps me from talking to myself. Listen. Uh-huh. See what I mean?
Uh-huh. You're in pretty good shape for winter now, Mrs. Borden. Radiator cap, antifreeze, battery, transmission grease, lube job, hose, gas, oil change. Comes to $39.74.
Charge it.
39 bucks? For what?
But, Bill, he was such a nice man. And he said everything was awful.
All we needed was a couple of quarts of alcohol.
But there was steam coming right out of its hat.
What?
And he said my girdle was frayed, and I had to have a new one.
Fan belt.
Well, it let your hose collapse.
You what? Oh, never mind. And what's all this for a new battery? Don't tell me steam was coming out of that, too.
No, but you see
But don't you know that it only costs $1? 1 lean buck for a battery recharge.
But I did charge it.
Someday. Someday. I asked you to get 5 gallons of gas, and you come back with a bill for 39 bucks. And the one thing we could have used, you forgot. A windshield wiper blade.
You don't appreciate me.
Well, All right, Hank. All right. I know you're only trying to do the best you could, but from now on, will you ask me before you fall for all these things you don't need? I know the answers.
Oh, Bill, darling, I forgive you. And I'm going to give that gas station man a piece of my mind, too. I want a windshield wiper blade, and that's all.
Yes, ma'am. You got a wiper blade, Jerry?
Yes, sir?
I don't know why I should bother to come back here after the way you treated me. But after all, I couldn't drive without a windshield wiper, could I?
No, ma'am, you couldn't. What else seems to be the trouble, Mrs. Borden?
You know very well what you did, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Selling me all those things I didn't need.
Well, now, ma'am, there must be some mistake. I've been in business for 26 years, and I've never tried
Oh, my husband was very angry about it. He said you took advantage of me.
But, Mrs. Borden, what I sold you was for your protection.
Oh, is that so? Well, I don't want to hear another word about it. And as for that pen wiper, you can recharge it.
Can you imagine a dame like that? That's what burns a man when he's trying to do an honest job. Well, hello, stranger. We haven't seen you for some time.
And if I hadn't had both feet on the brakes and it wouldn't stop, I wouldn't be here. Do something.
When was the last time you had brake fluid put in?
Oh, we've only had the car a couple of years.
Jerry, check the brake fluid, will you? Bring it up to level.
Yes, sir.
If we were servicing your car regularly, Mrs. Borden, we could take care of these things before they happen. Now, you stay out of there. I'm not buying anything today. Well, I'm not interested in selling you anything you don't need, Mrs. Borden. But I've been in this business quite a few years, and I think you're entitled to any suggestions I can give you. Of course, you don't have to do anything about it if you don't want to.
Oh, I won't.
For instance, last fall we put antifreeze in this car. It ran well all winter, didn't it?
Oh, yes. I only knocked the garage door off.
I see. Well, anyway, now's the time to drain it out. Summer months are tough on engines. That's when they build up more rust and scale and corrosion.
Gee, it sounds expensive to me.
There's no charge. It's a free service. Of course, to do the job right, you'll want to put in some rust inhibitor. It's the cheapest insurance I know of against rust and scale and...
Corruption? Well, all right. I'm sure you're like me. Just an honest man who doesn't know his own mind.
But you stood right there and let that fathead throw 2 gallons of perfectly good antifreeze down the drain. I was going to use it next winter, and the winter after, maybe.
Well, it didn't cost anything to have it thrown out.
It didn't cost.
He said it was part of his service.
His service? My dough. Look, Hank, when are you going to start getting some sense about these things?
I'll have you know I have as much sense as you can shake a stick at. Or I wouldn't have married you. Stinker.
Which one of those guys keeps selling you all this stuff? I'd like to get my hands on him.
But you don't understand.
That goes double. I don't know why I bother to...
Oh, just for that, you can just get your own dinner.
All right. I'll eat at the dog wagon. And on the way down, I'm going to stop at that service station, and I'm going to tear that guy apart. Or I'm going to get my money back.
Bill, come back here. Bill, no fights now. It's against the law. Besides, you'll get a ticket.
I'm going to settle this thing once and for all. Are you the guy that runs this place?
No, sir, he's inside.
Hey, Herb! Oh, you're the guy I want to see.
No, wait a minute, mister.
The guy that thinks he can throw other people's money down the drain.
Look, Mr. Borden, I'm assuming that's who he is.
Who gave you permission to toss out my antifreeze?
I've been hoping you'd come in so that
I'm sick and tired of being pushed around by you guys. I'm here to collect 2 gallons of antifreeze or my dough.
Well, now, most people try to protect their investments by taking care of them properly.
What about that antifreeze?
Tell my husband about the corruption.
You stay out of this, Hank.
Look, Mr. Borden, there are a couple of things I've been wanting to explain to you.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I want explained.
Well, I'm going to do that right now. Jerry, will you get that picture?
Yes.
Let's go out to your car so I can show you what we're talking about.
I haven't got time for that.
It'll only take a few minutes. Then if you still think you want your antifreeze or your money, it'll be all right with me. Is that a deal?
Well, make it fast. Then it better be good.
Open the hood, will you, Jerry?
You bet.
Now, look. The engine of a modern car produces enough heat to warm a good-sized house on a 0 day. That's enough heat to destroy your engine if you didn't have a cooling system to take care of it. That's why the life of your car is tied in with how well you take care of your cooling system. It's just as important as your lubrication. There's a human quality to it. It has a heart, lungs, arteries, valves. But in an automobile, we call them something else. When the engine's running, the water or coolant flows along steadily from the bottom tank of the radiator to this water pump, or heart, that forces it up through the water jacket and the cylinder heads, where it absorbs all that terrific heat from the engine. Then it flows back to the top of the radiator, boiling hot. Those are arteries. From there, it passes down through the lungs. We call them fins and water tubes, with cold air blowing on it, drawn in by this fan. Finally, it emerges into the lower tank again, all cooled down and ready to be sent back along the same route. Your wife drove in here with steam coming out of the radiator. So I started to check the trouble spots in the cooling system, starting here at the front door. I showed you the pressure cap, all gummed up with sludge and rusty junk. There was only one thing to do: replace it and get rid of the rust and scale and corrosion. Captain Jinx's footprints, I call them.
Captain who?
Jinx. Just a name, but he's always around. You'll find his footprints everywhere. He's always working against you, a jinx to all mechanics, no matter what names they call him. And this is where he hangs out, in a nice, warm, wet automobile radiator. There were over 800,000 radiators had to be repaired or replaced last year because of him. And while I was replacing the cap, I was also looking for bubbles. They tell you about any internal leaks in your system. Bubble, bubble, trouble, trouble. Cracked heads, leaky gaskets, those kinds of things. And this water pump has got to be watched. It turns over about 5,000 times a minute, pushing coolant through the system. Sometimes the packing around the shaft gets to leaking. And depending on the type of pump it is, you either have to repack or replace. Yours was okay. Here's another trouble spot, the lower connecting hose, and its teammate, the upper connecting hose. A collapsed hose can mean several things, all of them bad. Yours, Mrs. Borden, was rotted and old, giving off rubber crumbs to cause plug-ups in your system. So I replaced it for you, remember? And tightened all the connections while I was at it. And another thing, your thermostat. It regulates the flow of heat through your engine by controlling the flow of coolant. When it gets to sticking so that the coolant does not flow properly or at the right temperatures, then your connecting hose can collapse, and your radiator begins to boil and steam. Like yours did, Mrs. Borden.
Remember, Bill? I told you steam was coming out of something.
The next is the fan and fan belt. They do the biggest part of the job of cooling your engine. And a loose blade or a badly pitched one can fly off and cause serious damage to your radiator. The fan belt works best when there's about this much give to it. That's enough. If it breaks, you're through. If it gets too loose, the fan and water pump or generator won't do their job. So when your fan belt gets frayed, you buy a new one.
Just like a girdle.
Exactly. The day you first drove in here, Mrs. Borden, it was my job to tell you honestly that the best way to clean up all this trouble was to drain and flush the cooling system and put in some dependable antifreeze to carry you through the winter.
That's exactly what I told my husband.
And now we come to the part that bothers you, Mr. Borden. Why did we drain out your antifreeze instead of letting it stay there for another winter?
Mm-hmm.
You sound just like our windshield wiper.
Well, it's like this. In hot weather, rust and scale and corruption build up faster than any other time of the year. And you don't want to be one of those 800,000 people who will have their radiators replaced this year, do you? When we put in your antifreeze, we crippled Captain Jinx's activities. It was cheap protection for a cold winter. But in doing its job, it also absorbs a lot of things you don't want to hold over for another winter. Adulterations, grease, gases, rust, and so on. It's better to lose it. And so I drained it out. And after flushing out all the rust and Captain Jinx's footsteps, scale...
And corruption?
We refilled with clean water and rust inhibitor to carry you through the summer months. The time to stop cooling system troubles is before they happen. And that's exactly what I tried to do for you.
I bet you tell that to everybody.
No, I never bothered about it before.
Well, maybe you should.
Why, of course you should. Well, how am I going to sleep nights thinking about Captain Jinx? From now on, any time I come in here, no matter what I want, you check the cooling system.
What's that?
Well, because if you don't, I'll feel like you sent me out with a button unbuttoned. Know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And when a button's unbuttoned, you've just got to button it, don't you? I think you got something, Mrs. Borden. The time to button a button is when you find it. And how do you find it? You look for it. Every time you open a hood. And when you see it, explain it. That really buttons it up. Put that on your checklist, Jerry, for year-round service. So it took Molly to make me understand that I had a natural right in my hands, leading to better service, more sales of everything, more profits. Call it free if you want, but I call it service. I got it down to a system now. I keep these 4 keys around to remind me of 4 doors. You can strike it rich in any one of them. But which? The first door is called inspection. It only takes a couple of minutes at a high profit per minute. Just check those trouble spots and check for leaks. Look for bubbles. That's real trouble. The second door, correction. When you button up all the buttons so that everything works perfectly. The third, make the replacements that are necessary. Service with a payoff. And the fourth is a big double gate where the other 3 doors lead you. There are 2 sides to it. One, drain, clean, flush, and put in antifreeze in the fall. The other side, when spring comes, drain it out, refill with clean water and rust inhibitor. Now you're ready for the 5th, which isn't a door at all. It's the path that leads to all of them. The thing that Molly taught me. Explain, explain, and explain as you go along. The customers love it. If it hadn't been for Molly's steaming radiator, I never would have looked for those other things, or made the tie-in sales that came out of it. Oil change, lube job, transmission grease, battery. The thing that Molly taught me was to look and explain, not just twice a year, but all of the time, the year round. Jerry caught on to the idea quickly. He's one of my best men now. Never misses.
Good morning, ma'am. Shall I fill her up?
Yes, please.
How's your cooling system today?
Young man, how dare you?
Hey, Herb!
There she is, Molly.